Yummy. Let's take another deep breath, shall we? Let everything out first. Exhale. And take a deep breath in. Let it go. Let's do that together again. Breathe in. Let it go. One more collective breath. Breathe in. And let it go. So good morning, my friends. How you feeling? Yeah, it feels good in here today. So I'm Reverend Elisha Christopher. If you don't know me, good morning. Hello, I'm the spiritual director here at the center. And we are just a few days away from winter solstice. And, you know, that's the thing I want to talk about today, is because I really believe that in a big way, winter solstice is the reason for the season. You know, we had our holiday party here last night, and, you know, right? Yes, we had a lot of fun here last night, y'all. And, you know, that's one of the things we do at this time of year, right? This is a time for celebration. We have parties, we put lights on everything, we decorate our trees, we exchange gifts, we do all of this stuff at this time of year. And one of the things that is interesting and beautiful to me is when I look across traditions, when I look across cultures, when I look across religions and see that there are times of the year that almost all of us have some important or special celebration that comes up. And there's something like 14 religious holidays in the month of December across like 7 or 8 different of the world's religious traditions. And when we have moments like that on the calendar, it makes me go, there's something here, right? And, you know, take a moment and just think back just a few generations, maybe 100 or 150 years before we had electricity, right? For the last few months, every day it gets darker and colder. Every day the light is a little bit less, the days get shorter. And especially if our ancestors lived in the northern hemisphere, wintertime is a time of, are we gonna make it through, right? To survive the winter, we tend to have to go inside. We have to huddle together. We have to spend a lot of time in close quarters. And that's how we would survive these darkest nights of the year. The coldest time of winter was we had to lean into each other. And so we keep, even though we have electricity and, you know, heaters and all the things in our houses now, we still do that. We still come together at this time of year. We still lean into community. We still lean into that awareness that something bigger than us is happening. And the thing that I love about the winter solstice is that it's this time of year, like I said, where we go through this experience where we witness the world getting darker every single day. And then there's this moment where we turn a corner and suddenly each day is going to get brighter after that. And just that little metaphor in and of itself is a powerful thing for the human psyche, right? So think about the celebration of Hanukkah, right? When we celebrate the miracle of the lamp oil that was only supposed to last for a couple days, and it lasted for 8 nights during this time when the light was needed, right? When we didn't know that there was enough to support us, the light showed up anyways, right? In the Christian traditions, we celebrate the birth of the light of the world, and we do it right on the winter solstice, a few days after. But that's the awareness, it's the metaphor for us that we celebrate at this time of year that the light is reborn, right? And to remember that the world that we live in, the nature of nature, the nature of the universe is that it has cycles and it has seasons. And so do we, right? Throughout the course of my life, many of you know I've talked about this from up here before, but depression has been one of the gifts I've gotten to explore over the course of my life. And as a person who's dealt with that most of my life, wintertime tends to be the time where it kicks in a little extra. You know, I moved to the Pacific Northwest for a few years, and I'll tell you, less light in the wintertime affected me in a big way. And so I came back south. Uh, for good reason. But that there's something deep in our human psyche that has this relationship with the light and the dark. And we tend to negativize, I made that word up right now, the darkness, and put a positive look on the light, right? And the thing that I want to bring forth for us today as we think about moving into the winter solstice and all the celebrations that we all engage in the next few weeks is to really think about what gifts the darkness brings us. Because if we just focus on the light and we just think that the light is good, we can get a little caught up in how we hold things. And I know for myself, some of the biggest gifts that have come into my life have come through some of the darkest moments. And to start to think for ourselves that perhaps the darkness is not something bad, but something to be embraced. Perhaps the darkness in our world is something that we actually are being invited to sit in, because in the darkness is the womb. In the darkness is the soil. It's the place where the seeds get planted, where possibility comes from. And I saw something that someone posted on Facebook, a friend of mine this week, that was talking about if we just look at the light, we're going to get burned. Right? If there was no nighttime, if there was no winter, we would not have life on this planet. If we were just to stare into the light, y'all, it would be blinding. Right? That's why we can't just stare at the sun. We need the shadows. We need the darkness. We need the contrast in order to give us the fullness of our experience. And the celebrating and the honoring of the turning of the seasons as part of our sacred rituals throughout the year, which is something we've started to do here in this center in the last couple of years, is so important for us to remember that we are earth creatures, that we are mammals, right? There's an animal part of us that's connected to the cycles and to the seasons. And it's a little bit counterintuitive that at the time of the year where we should be going into like hibernation and rest and not doing a lot, we like do everything all at once. You know? And so there's a little bit of a disconnect from the rhythms and the harmony of life itself and how we tend to go through life, right? And so to think as we move into the winter solstice, to this darkest night of the year, as we move into that time where the light begins to return, to embrace the fact that each one of us are connected to the rhythms of the planet, that we are connected to the rhythms of the universe, to honor the ebbs and flows in our own energy. Because the mechanistic world that we live in tells each one of us that we're supposed to be the exact same every single day, 7 days a week, show up at your job, be the same energy with us all the time, when really each one of us has ebbs and flows. And the more we tune ourselves to the cycles and the seasons, perhaps the more we can then honor the rhythms within our own bodies, right? And so the invitation is to think for yourself as we move into these next few darkest days. What gifts are here for us in the darkness? In your own life, in your own experiences, what has the universe gifted you in the darkest moments of your life? Because it's in that darkness that those little seeds and sparks of possibility get ignited. And we can't open those possibilities without going into that space first. Because we can't just keep expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding into the light. We have to be in the ebb and the flow of it all. And if we are willing to look to the darkness as something that has gifts for us, and also remember that there's cycles and seasons, and that even the darkest night will bring about the return of the light, that can also be a powerful truth for us when we look into the state of the world And it seems like this thing that feels like darkness and wrongness and scariness and coldness and all that stuff that's brewing in our collective consciousness, all the chaos that's happening in the world, if we name that as that thing we might call darkness or a winter time of our collective of our collective soul, we can then remember that in the cycles and the seasons of the universe, the light always returns. And that even though it may feel like we are moving through a collective season of winter that's been going on for years, springtime comes next. Right? So as we move into that place where it feels like chaos, where it feels like darkness, where it feels like we're being pulled under, it's because we're being prepared to birth something new for the springtime that comes after the darkness. And that we can be in a place of embracing the possibilities that are here for us in every moment of our lives. If we can give honor and give our love to all the different ways that life shows up, that we participate with it. You know, it's amazing to me how many different celebrations and metaphors come up around this time of year from all of our different traditions. And again, all of them point us to the light, to the birth of the light, the return of the light, the emergence. Even in the Buddhist tradition, there's a holiday in December that's about the moment the Buddha decided to sit at the base of the Bodhi tree. That time when he decided to just sit down. And the thing about that particular portion of the Buddha story is that if you know the story of the Buddha, he spent much of his life searching for awakening. He went to the extremes of both ends, of indulgence and asceticism, of deep meditation, of the deep practices, almost starving himself to death. He was trying so hard to find enlightenment. And in one of the texts, the English translation says something to the effect of, he finally sat down for the purpose of sitting. He stopped trying. He just sat. And when he finally was willing to just sit in the stillness and not try to achieve anything, the light came on. Right? And so again, as we move into these darker days, as we move towards winter solstice on Thursday, take the opportunity to just sit. In the midst of winter, as we step into this cold and dark time, I'm going to give you permission to do a little less. To just be with yourself, to be with the season, to be in the contemplation of what the gifts are that are here for you in this time of year. And the other thing I want to say as we move into our time of celebration, we had our party last night. Many of us are going to celebrate various different holidays in the next few weeks. We're going to have our winter solstice service here on Thursday evening. You know, last month our theme was the sacred, the mundane, and the profane. And these moments of celebration, we call them holidays, whatever it is that you particularly celebrate. I want us to keep in mind the deep, potent sacredness of these points in the year, these different shifts and seasons. Because it's really easy to allow our for our sacred rituals to become these mundane things that we don't think about the deeper meanings of. We just exchange gifts, we have our parties, we do the things, but do we really stop and pause and look for the deep, sacred connection that's available at this point in the year? The reminder to really look to that depth of who we are, to listen to that deep inner voice that's always trying to talk to us, that's always trying to guide us. Each one of us has that inner voice that is always telling us what we need to do, what we need to know, how we need to be. That's the voice of our intuition, the voice of our higher self. And it's when we're in the busyness of life that it's real easy to not hear that voice when it's trying to talk to us. And so the opportunity to slow down, to name the sacred, to be in the stillness, to honor the seasons, is an opportunity also to listen. To listen to that thing that's trying to speak to us, to be open enough to let the busyness fall away so that the something more can show up. I think especially in these times that we live in, it's really important for us to remember that there are gifts, that there is potent power in the darkness. And that when we're willing to look for it, it will reveal itself. And then to remember that the cycles and the seasons are always turning. And no matter how dark and cold that winter night is, the light will always return and spring will always come back around. I remember when I was in my early 20s, it was after a suicide attempt, and I was in care, and one of the nurses gave me a note. I was sitting on a bench in the hospital, and the nurse just gave me this little note, and it was a quote from the Buddha, and it said, "Remember, winter never fails to turn into spring." And that little, I still have that, like in a journal, because that little phrase became such a potent reminder for me that even in the darkest moments of my life, even when winter comes around and it seems like that long dark night is never going to end, winter never fails to turn into spring. And if we remember that, even as we look out at the things that we feel are wrong and broken or falling apart, we can remember that there is always the seasonal turns, that the shift and the change will come, and that even the death and the destruction, what looks like the falling away of everything, is the precursor to the rising of the new, of new beginnings and new possibilities. So let's hold that in our minds as we move into the winter solstice, as we join in our celebrations with our families and friends in the next week or so, to be in the realization that there are so many gifts for us in this time of year. Let's look to the darkness to see what it truly has to gift to each one of us. Because each one of us is here for a purpose. Each one of us is here to be in service to the world, to be in service to love, to be in service to each other. And I really believe more and more and more that the thing you are here to do, the light you are here to be in the world, is hidden in your darkness. That whatever your pain, whatever your struggle, whatever the deep hurt place inside of you, I guarantee for each one of us in that little place, there is a deep gift waiting to be revealed. And when we find it, oftentimes it's the thing we're here to do, the person we're here to be. So let's use this time of year to look into the darkness and ask ourselves who we are here to be, what light each one of us is being called to bring forth from that place of the womby soil of wintertime. Each one of us is being invited to bring a new light into the world. You are the light of the world. So take a deep breath in and let it go. Another deep breath. If it's comfortable, close your eyes and take another deep breath in. And so as we just allow these words to settle in this moment, I just invite each one of us to contemplate for a moment that the great, vast universe that we live in is filled with infinite darkness. From that darkness emerged an infinite number of points of light. And it is the light within the darkness, the interplay of the two together, that has brought forth all of creation, all of reality. that it is the balance and the ebb and the flow of the light and the dark that is the dance of life itself. Because what I know is that there is one seamless presence, one power, one mind, one infinite being that is living and breathing throughout the entirety of existence. In the darkest corners of the universe and in the places where the light is the brightest, all of it is what I call God. The one mind, holding it all, dreaming it all, being it all. And that one who is infinite wholeness, containing both halves, the up, the down, the light, the dark, the in, the out, that is the truth of who each one of us is. Each one of us is that infinite consciousness manifest in human form. Each one of us is the way that creation and evolution is expressing itself into the world. So let us remember today, as we move into the shortest days and the longest nights, the cold time of the year, let each one of us realize and remember that each one of us was sent to this planet, sent into this life to be the light of the world. That perhaps it is the darkness that we are living in that invited each one of us to come into this life, to be here on purpose, to be in service to the revealing of the light, to the lifting of the veil, to the opening of possibilities. So let each one of us within our own hearts and minds today say yes to embracing the darkness that is around us and within us, and to also opening ourselves to being the place where the light reveals itself. Remembering that the darkness is the container for the light. And so we open ourselves to embrace both the depth of who we are and the heights of who we are. To embrace our darkness and to embrace our light. To be in the balance, to be in the ebb and the flow, to be in the seasons and the cycles of life, to remember that we are not separate from the earth, we are not separate from the universe, we are not separate from the ecosystem, we are not separate from each other. It is all one thing. And so let's honor it all, opening ourselves to see the truth everywhere we look. And so I just speak a word of gratitude this morning for this beloved community, for the depth that invites us deeper, and for the light that shines through our eyes when we look for the truth and see it shining back in each other. And so I just speak a word of remembering once again that there is a power for good in this universe that is so much greater than we are. It is at work in everything, shining the stars, spinning the galaxies and the planets, sparking the seeds to grow from the darkness of the soil, the one life involved in it all. And it is that same power that flows through each one of us, through every word, through every action, through every choice we make. Let each one of us remember that we are the light of the world. Let us choose to be it and to see it and to gift that everywhere we go. And so in gratitude, I bless this time as I let it be, and so it is. Thank you, friends.